for allegedly manipulating its currency. Now, critics have warned that the bill could spark a trade war. Senator Bob Corker of Tennessee is one of them. He wrote an op-ed criticizing the bill in today's Wall Street Journal. Senator Corker joins me now from Capitol Hill. Senator, welcome to the show. Here's the thing. For years, everyone's complained about this unfair trade that we have with China, their currency being artificially manipulated. So a lot of people would say, why would anyone be against any proposal that would actually crack down and make them accountable?
Yeah, well, there's no question that China manipulates currency. I stated that in the op-ed today. The question is, what do you do in response to that? The fact is they have allowed, their currency to float. It's now appreciated 30% over the last 5 years. And so what we need to do is address some other things that are big problems for our country and for exporters. And that is, number one, the way they deal with intellectual property rights, constantly stealing those from companies that operate here in our country and trying to operate there. Basically, their government says that you have to buy Chinese-only goods in many cases, which really blocks out American exports. Obviously, what we need to be focused on, our exports to China have been growing twice as rapidly as our exports to any other country in the world, or to other countries in the world as a whole, twice as fast. So what we really need to be working on is ways of making that grow more rapidly. And that means opening up their consumers to our countries. That means, by the way, them investing in our own country. But I think after having an economic slowdown like we have and having a financial crisis in Europe, the last thing we need to have right now is a trade war. And whenever you introduce tariffs, which is what this bill does automatically, when you introduce tariffs, what that means is they're going to retaliate. And this is exactly the same thing that Congress did back in the 1930s with Smoot-Hawley, and they created a trade war. And so it's just not good thinking. And everybody, by the way, I guarantee you there are numbers of senators that know this is very, very bad policy that are voting for it anyway because of what you said, because it plays well back home. And it sounds like we're getting tough with China. What I think we ought to do here is to try to solve the problems we have with China and try to grow our exports geometrically, and that's why I've taken the stand that I've taken. I know I'm not going to win today, but it seems to me that we're elected to the United States Senate to try to solve problems for the American people, not to beat our chest and act like we've done something when we really haven't. And by the way, I don't think this bill is going to become law anyway. It's been set up as a, quote, messaging bill, but it seems to me, again, people of Tennessee elected me to the United States Senate to try to make sensible, sound decisions. I don't think they want to see a trade war with China right now.
Now, with all due respect, sir, I don't disagree with anything you just said, but by the same token, you are talking about increasing our exports to China in a manner that, they haven't played by the rules at all. Why would they play by the rules now? If we didn't display some sort of notion that we're ready to put on the brass knuckles too and play tough if we have to, otherwise, how do we really get them to move? How do we get them to move on the currency issues, the intellectual property issues, if we don't show some sort of grit and determination?
Well, we have shown grit and determination, and there have been improvements on intellectual property rights, and those improvements are continuing. And the fact is that our exports, as I just mentioned, they grew twice the rate going to China as they did every other place in the world. So look, internal pressures are going to cause our currency to grow. They have inflation. Middle-class citizens, as the middle class grows in China, are going to want access to American products. They're the second largest economy in the world, and so what we want to do is, yes, push them along. We want them to have a more sophisticated financial system. We want their currency to float, and by the way, they've acknowledged that and are taking steps in that direction. So again, I think we have taken tough positions. We need to take them to the WTO when they violate WTO regulations, but the fact is that, again, this is something that if we handle it right, could end up great for the American economy. If we handle it wrongly, you've heard of the J-curve. You've heard of the J-curve. When you end up with a trade war or tariffs, what happens is everybody suffers. And all I'm saying is right now, with an economic slowdown in our country, with a financial crisis in Europe, to even be talking about a trade war doesn't make a bit of sense to me. We do need to be tough with China. but we need to be tough with them on the right things that we can solve.
Now, you mentioned that this was a messaging bill. I'm sure China is smart enough to realize that. You know, in fact, critics of this bill on the other side say it has no teeth at all. So do you really think if it went through that China would retaliate? You know, and is this one of the reasons why people who actually agree with you are still going to vote for it anyway?
Well, let me say, the bill started out, it's called an S bill. I know to your viewing audience, what does that mean? What it means is it didn't originate in the House, and it has something to do with revenue. So a lot of people are wondering how in the world it ends up actually becoming law in the first place. I do think if there's a big vote on this, then in fact the House may be pressured to take it up. I don't think that's going to happen, but it might. Getting back to the tariffs, again, passing the bill doesn't necessarily create a trade war, but putting tariffs in place does, okay? And the bill explicitly states, and the president cannot veto those tariffs, that tariffs can be put in place where people can prove currency manipulation, and companies can bring suit and cause that to happen. Again, I just think that we need to continue to have the strong stance we've had with China on intellectual property, on exports, on us doing business with the Chinese government. Obviously, they're a huge purchaser of goods, and we're making progress. Again, as I mentioned, exports to China growing twice as fast as any other place in the world. That's what our manufacturers want to see. Those are those great jobs in America that we want to see grow. You don't do that by creating a trade war. And I just think, again, as a United States Senator, whether it becomes law or not, that people should look to us to try to use sound mind in these things. And again, there's valid disagreements. There are a lot of people that disagree strongly with me on this issue. But I don't want to do something that just, you know, I'm doing to make myself look like I'm beating my chest for people back home. That's not what I came here to do.
I understand, and I appreciate your integrity. You're a straight shooter. Listen, you gave us a history lesson and a civics lesson on top of it all. So thanks a lot, Senator Bob Corker. We appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
Great points. Choose your battle.